So I'd like to start just by asking you if you could tell me a bit about your role as Director of Social Responsibility and Sustainability here at Edinburgh.
Certainly. So the university's made a big commitment on this. So we have a commitment to be making a significant, sustainable and socially responsible contribution to the world. And it's my job, I think, along with the department, to help the university figure out what that means in practice. So what are the risks? What are the opportunities? What should we prioritise? And how can we deliver successfully against those objectives?
What does it mean to make the strategic business case for sustainability, and why is it important?
Okay, so I think we need to understand what a business case is. It's a way of talking to the organisation that you work for and explaining why something should be done and what the benefits of that are. So you can see right away, I think, why that's important, because whilst others are making the case for sustainability in society, somebody needs to make it for the specific organisation that you work in. So I think we need to take it in stages. The first thing that we did probably was to make people aware that we existed and we were there to help. And we began to build alliances across the university so that we could understand what other people's priorities are, we could listen to what they were telling us, and we could try and make relevant what we were wanting to do on social responsibility and sustainability to the organisation and its priorities. So that was the first thing, is going out there, engaging. I think the second thing that we did then was try and draw together evidence on the risks that we might face and what we could do about them, some of the benefits that we might get from doing this, and trying to make sure that this isn't just about sustainability in general, this is about how sustainability applies in our organisation and will deliver things that benefit the organisation and the people working within it.
Okay, and what have been the main outcomes so far?
So we can point to lots of, I think, big ticket items, if you like, that we're feeling very pleased about. We've made a university-wide commitment to be a zero carbon university by 2040, which I think is really significant. We've made a lot of progress working with colleagues in finance and elsewhere to commit to full divestment. So by the end of 2020, we will be fully divested in our investments. But we've also, for example, done some leading work, I think, on how we can reduce the impact of our spending on things like human rights or child labour. And more laterally, we've been investing very positively in social investments, looking to tackle homelessness, looking to support our student and community social entrepreneurs with real-world impacts. So, for example, supporting a business that will help homeless people give alternative walking tours in the city. So we've done a lot of big things. I think more significantly, though, what we've tried to do is place this issue of sustainability and social responsibility on the agenda, and to raise awareness and to build alliances. Because I think once you have that, once you have the support of people, people understand what the topics are and know how they can contribute, you can generate a kind of rolling stone of success in a way, if you like.
So those are some really fantastic achievements so far. Can you tell me what are the factors do you think have enabled you, thinking about how you went through the process, what factors really helped and enabled you along the way?
First thing, I would say having a great team, which is fantastic. So knowing that we have the staff and the resource to actually deliver on some of this. Second thing, I think, is understanding how change happens in an organisation, which sounds awful dry and boring, but it's not just the quality of the evidence that you've got, but it's working out how that can be applied to an organisation and why an organisation will make changes. So we've been spending a lot of time thinking about that. We've also been trying to build up that evidence base, which is specific to the university. So it's not just general information about climate change, it's climate change as it applies to this university. And it's back to the allies point, the awareness and the building connections. One of the factors is I think we build up strong alliances amongst staff and students, alumni, and also the senior leaders of the university. So I think if you put all that together, those are the factors that help us deliver success.
And what about the main challenges? Thinking back to the early days, what were the kinds of challenges that you faced and how did you get around those?
So I think probably the first one is just people being aware that the department existed, that we had these commitments and we needed to figure out how to deliver them. And that's because everybody's really busy. There are not that many people these days sitting around waiting for an email to arrive or a piece of work. So trying to communicate clearly and effectively about these topics was one of the first challenges. I think the second one then is, once you've got people's attention, is to actually deliver something. So don't produce a massive strategy that's going to take 7,000 years to deliver. Pick a few important topics, fix them, tell everybody about them, because that builds your credibility. This is the sort of department that will actually deliver on the things that it delivers. One of the other challenges, again, is the sheer scale of the organisation for us. So a very large organisation, complicated with lots of different parts. So again, understanding how that organisation works as best we can, finding people across the organisation who want to work with us.
Okay, so having gone through the process, if there was one thing you wish you'd known before you began, what would it be? Several
things, I think. One is, it's going to take longer than you think, particularly initially. It's going to take time to build up. I think of it like Jim Collins, who's a management thinker, talks about change as trying to get a huge flywheel going. That when you're first trying to get that flywheel going, it's immensely difficult and everything seems to take ages. And then suddenly the flywheel starts spinning. And I think it's a little bit the same here. It takes longer than you think. The governance and the way in which decisions are made and who makes them will take longer to figure out. Why is that? It's because it's new. It's something cross-cutting the university hasn't often done before. And therefore it's going to take a bit of time for the university to figure out who should be making decisions at what level about what. I think, though, the other thing that I've learned is to be bolder. So once you have a track record of showing that you can achieve things, use that to think about what other changes should be made, and be confident in the fact that you're on the right side of history. Issues like social responsibility and sustainability are of great interest to society, great interest to our students and staff. So be confident that these are the sort of issues you should be bringing forward to senior leaders to resolve.
Okay, and thinking back to the process, if you were going to do it all over again, is there anything you think you would have done differently the second time around?
I think to probably be a little bit more patient at the start, that it would take some time, and just because I had thought I had figured out the answer didn't mean everybody else had to immediately jump. And again, I think to then pick a few important issues and very visibly be seen to solve them so that people can build some confidence that as a department, as a leader, you're going to deliver and not waste their time. And then the point again about being bolder, once you're confident you can deliver, is to pick some goals that are going to inspire people. So don't be too incremental. Do think about, like, for example, with our target on 0 by 2040, a long-term, big goal that's got people fired up and all parts of the organisation. So not just estates people working on gas and electric, but people working on travel, people working on research, people working on teaching can all think through how can they make a contribution.
Okay, thank you. And I think from what you've described, Edinburgh's obviously come a long way in terms of where the social responsibility and sustainability agenda is. Where's the case still to be made looking forward?
So there's always more to do, I would say. So I could rattle off a list of immediate things that I think we want to do more and better on. What I think actually, though, is the bigger challenge is first of all sustaining this. It's a difficult environment for everybody in terms of budgets and in terms of lots of other pressures like Brexit. So sustaining what we already have, and then trying to make sure that this becomes just how we do business around here. So this shouldn't be about just inspiring leaders and inspiring departments who are working with others. It should be about making it part of the culture. About how, when you arrive as a student, you're going to be operating in a sustainable way. When you're travelling and making choices, when you're running your buildings, this is just how we do it around here. And there is a statement about culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I think the challenge will be it's not just having a strategy, but having a culture which is about sustainability, and that's a longer term challenge.
Okay. What about lack of evidence or data? Is that a barrier? You mentioned that at the beginning as being something important to build. Is that at this more advanced stage still an issue?
I think it is, actually. I think whenever you're going to be working on this, there's always going to be a challenge about having enough information, and that shouldn't be something that stops you taking action. At the same time, I think you should be thinking about how to develop a more strategic evidence base as you go forward. So we've been, again, with our finance colleagues, thinking long and hard about how do we measure the impact of some of the newer things that we're doing. We have lots of projects. We keep an eye on those projects and make sure they're working. But how do we tell a kind of higher level story about our social impact or environmental impact? And not just how we measure it, but how do we embed that into the processes and functions of the organisation? And this is cutting edge stuff that is being worked on in big corporates, but it's something the university sector is not used to dealing with. So that's one of our big challenges, I think, is just evidence and building it into the very business model of the organisation.
Okay, and And thinking sort of more broadly, based on your experience, what advice would you have for others who are about to embark on the journey of making the strategic business case for sustainability in their own college or university?
Lots of advice. So first of all, make a start. Don't be paralysed by analysis. Don't try and produce an all-sinking, all-dancing strategy that has no chance of being implemented. Pick some issues that you can deal with them, build support on the back of that. Second thing, understand your organisation. So don't be the sort of person who always talks in sustainability jargon and has no interest except inside the sustainability bubble. That's no use. You need to find out how the organisation works, you need to find out what's on the organisation's mind, and you need to try and link what you're doing to what the organisation is doing. Thirdly, everybody likes to have a go at senior leaders, but it's a tough job. The senior leaders are very busy with multiple issues. So don't underestimate that. Time it well. Think about what they're interested in. Don't always tell them, show them. So if you want them to understand something, can you actually take them somewhere to show them what's going on rather than tell them about it? Write reports that are focused. Don't write reports that are written for experts. Write them for people who are busy, who have a limited amount of time and don't know much about the subject. Would be some of my advice. And also, I think, understand how change happens in an organisation. So there are studies about how change happens. Familiarise yourself with that and think of yourself as a change agent rather than just a sustainability professional.
Okay, and are there any priority tools out there for sustainability professionals who are looking to engage and influence their senior leaders and to drive through that change process that you've described?
So I think there's plenty of practical sustainability advice out there, so I'm not going to mention that. I would draw people's attention to the guides that tell you about how change happens and the sorts of things that you need to do in order to persuade senior leaders. So obviously the business case guide should be an excellent example of that. That's something where we've tried to draw upon the learning of lots of people. It's packed with examples of how to do this in practice based upon people's learning. Don't be afraid to fail. Everybody fails sometimes, but what can you learn from that? So I think, how does change happen? How do you manage risks? And how do you explain benefits? And hopefully drawing upon the business case guide as a real practical toolkit for you.
Okay, Dave Gorman, thank you very much. It's been really interesting speaking to you today.
Thank you.